The National Desk, America's News Now. Now, an economic crisis averted. UPS and the Teamsters avoid a costly strike, but the Fed could squash recent optimism with another interest rate hike expected.
Even when we look at core inflation, it's started to come down in a number of countries. It's not coming down fast enough.
Then, weather warnings, toxic Canadian wildfire smoke returning to the northern half of the U.S., while southern states sizzle in lingering heat. And another young athlete suffers an apparent heart attack during practice. What we're hearing from his family of NBA royalty fame. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez. UPS and the Teamsters Union that represents 340,000 warehouse and delivery workers have now come to a tentative agreement. This deal averts a strike that could have proven disastrous for the entire American economy. Now, it only took a matter of hours for the negotiating parties to reach that accord when the two sides finally came back to the table, this after more than 2 weeks of no talks. Now, the union had been practicing picket lines in preparation before striking the deal. Union leaders are now calling historic and overwhelmingly lucrative. All along, UPS believed a deal would be made before there would be a work stoppage. Now, this agreement includes higher wages, more benefits, and a renewed pledge for air-conditioned trucks that was agreed to a month ago. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre saying the president always trusted in the process.
The president has said for a long time that he believes in collective bargaining, and that's what you saw, and it worked.
Now, this deal is for a new 5-year contract, and before it goes into effect, it does need to be voted on and ratified by the Teamsters Union members. For the impact this has on the economy, Atra El-Nashar has more.
The U.S. economy dodging disaster Tuesday when UPS and the Teamsters Union, representing more than 340,000 of its workers, reached a deal that will keep trucks on the road and cargo planes in the air. A strike would have upended supply chains, threatening to undo progress that's been made on inflation and consumer confidence. The latter just reached a 2-year high, according to new data from the Conference Board.
I think consumers are definitely happier, not only now, but they're also thinking about the future.
The group's chief economist, Dana Peterson, says a lot of that has to do with the labor market.
Most people are working. People have experienced some kind of increase in their wages. Some people have quit and found better jobs. And certainly we've seen people being supported by leftover excess savings.
What's a boost for workers is acting as a headwind for the Federal Reserve. Tight labor market conditions helping to keep inflation high. On Tuesday, members kicked off their 2-day meeting that's expected to result in another quarter-point interest rate hike, which could mean the highest federal funds rate since 2001. What's more difficult to predict is whether Fed economists will update their predictions about there being the potential for a mild recession beginning later this year. But it's the National Bureau of Economic Research that's tasked with officially declaring a recession. And its chair, John Lipsky, says he's confident inflation will continue to moderate.
There are good reasons to think that this economy could avoid a recession, but there are also good reasons to think that growth is going to be slow.
Now, that slowed growth, slowed demand is an intentional engineered effect of the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes. A Wallet Hub survey finds that if the Fed raises rates by a quarter point, which we'll learn tomorrow if they do or not, that'll cost credit card holders about $1.7 billion in the next 12 months.
All in the name of fighting inflation. Atra, now you just spoke to one of the president's economic advisors about the outlook for consumers. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, I talked to Heather Boucher, who's on the Council for Economic Advisors. And of course, we know the White House has been tracking closely public sentiment. It's part of their Bidenomics push that we've seen unfold over the summer. And she told me they're, of course, very heartened by today's Conference Board data, showing the highest level of consumer confidence in 2 years. But they're also looking ahead to more relief that they believe is on the way based on their economic modeling in the form of rent decreases, which would be huge if that does pan out, because as we've been seeing, shelter costs are the biggest driver of inflation in the consumer price index.
And a big problem for many people across the country. Atra El-Nashar in Washington tonight. Thank you. The record heat in the U.S. has still not let up, and it's moving further east now. It's now covering parts of the Midwest and is headed towards the Northeast later this week. Now, more than 46 million people are under heat alerts today. And if you look at this map here, the areas that you see here marked there, that's where they are under those heat alerts now. Now, some places in California, Arizona, and Nevada are again reaching at least 110 degrees. Many other areas in the hundreds there. Next week, scorching temperatures are still forecast for the South and the West, but the Midwest and Northeast are expected to catch a bit of a break finally. Now, smoke from hundreds of Canadian wildfires is hovering over parts of the United States yet again. Northern U.S. cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Minneapolis facing some poor air quality today. Now, as of this morning, all three cities were among the 20 most polluted major cities in the world. Canadian authorities say there are about 1,090 active wildfires in Canada right now. More than 670 of them are considered to be out of control. To the border crisis now, a federal judge has blocked President Biden's border asylum policy, calling the program arbitrary and capricious. But the judge held his own ruling for 14 days, allowing the administration to appeal his decision, keeping the status quo for now at the border. Now, Biden's asylum policy started back in May, and it made it more difficult for migrants to receive asylum if they entered the United States illegally. And the administration credits this plan, among other reasons, for the drastic reduction we've seen of migrants encounters there at the border since the end of Title 42. Now, this particular judge overruled a similar Trump policy during his time as president. Some new details now. Suffolk County officials ending their search today of murder suspect Rex Heuermann's house. Police had been searching the home and surrounding areas for the last 12 days. Authorities believe some of the victims may have been killed inside the home. The police commissioner, Rodney Harrison, said today that could not be confirmed, but did say that they collected a massive amount of materials to be analyzed for evidence. Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. A local Tennessee soccer coach accused of raping young children appeared in court today for a preliminary hearing. You see him there. The judge denying a motion from the defense team to place a gag order restricting media coverage of this trial. Franklin police arrested Camilo Campos earlier this month after he left his phone full of incriminating pictures and video at a local restaurant. Now, police say he raped multiple boys and then filmed those acts. Police confirm Campos entered the U.S. illegally. New details in the investigation into January 6th and the efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Former senior DOJ official Richard Donahue, who served during the Trump administration, says he was interviewed by the Office of Special Counsel Jack Smith, but he has not been asked to testify before the federal grand jury. Now, this comes after former President Donald Trump said he was informed that he is the target of that investigation. Biden administration officials announcing a new initiative today that will push insurance companies to increase coverage for mental health, a big problem across the country now. This proposed rule would require equal access to medical and mental health benefits. The change would impact millions of Americans. About 1 in every 5 U.S. adults struggles with mental health issues. The rule will have a 60-day public comment period before it can go into effect. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was in a car accident today. However, he is not hurt. He and his team were on their way to an event in Tennessee when there was a rear-end collision with DeSantis' motorcade. Only one team member suffered a minor injury. This, of course, comes as DeSantis' presidential campaign is planning a reboot now with more of a national focus. And new tonight, an abortion rights amendment to the state's constitution has officially made Ohio's November ballot for this fall. Nearly 500,000 valid signatures were counted, supporting the amendment that would make reproductive health care decisions, including abortions, an individual right. On August 8th, Ohioans will vote on issue 1. That's the name of it. It's the threshold for constitutional amendments. A yes vote raises the percent needed from 50+1 to 60%. Well, listen to this. Bronny James, that's the oldest son of NBA's all-time leading scorer LeBron James, has just been released from intensive care and he is stable. The USC freshman was rushed to the hospital after suffering a cardiac arrest at a basketball practice yesterday. The family says he remains in the hospital, but just for observation right now. Now, sudden cardiac arrest can have drastic ramifications, and every second counts when treating a victim. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares what kind of intervention increases the odds of survival in these medical emergencies.
A sudden cardiac arrest, or SCA as it's often called, is the sudden loss of all heart activity due to an irregular heart rhythm. As we are learning more about LeBron's son, Bronny, those who suffer these events say it is a reminder of how urgent medical care can make a difference.
Hopefully this young man survives, and then when he does, There are 19 others that are not going to make it.
Peter Kelly knows that because after a morning workout with his wife 7 years ago, he too had a cardiac arrest.
She came around on that fourth lap and saw the bottom of my shoes and this couple standing over me.
That couple knew CPR and where to find an automated external defibrillator.
I always ask people, I said, if that were to happen in front of you, would you be able and prepared and ready to go to be able to administer, bystander administer CPR?
The earlier you can start doing CPR, the more likely the patient's going to survive.
Dr. Kamal Shamisha of the Tri-Health Heart Institute says there are 3 focal points of CPR, so here's what you need to know.
Circulation, airway, and breathing. Where circulation actually is the priority, so chest compressions over mouth-to-mouth resuscitation being the priority. So as long as you can, provide those chest compressions, 30 compressions for every 2 breaths at a rate of 100 to 120 compressions a minute, you're very likely to help somebody.
We don't know what kind of medical care was administered to Bronny, but CPR and AED care within 3 to 5 minutes of a cardiac arrest ups a victim's chance of survival as much as 70%. The American Heart Association does offer CPR and AED training on a regular basis. Check with your local chapter for an upcoming session. I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus. Back to you.
Coming up here on the National Desk, President Biden designated a major new monument today across 3 sites. This historical significance when we return. And then the next tropical storm that could be brewing in the Atlantic, what forecasters are expecting. And police in Seattle now at a breaking point as the city hosts high-profile events this summer. We'll tell you all about them when we can return in 90 seconds. U.S. home prices are up. New numbers out today show a 0.7% increase in May from April. It was the 4th consecutive month of price gains after 7 straight months of declines. However, year over year, prices are continuing to go down. The national composite is 0.5 percentage point lower than it was in May of 2022. And today, President Biden signed a proclamation designating a national monument across 3 sites in both Illinois and Mississippi, all in honor of Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. Emmett Till was just 14 years old when he was kidnapped, tortured, and killed in a racially motivated attack in August of 1955. Now, his tragic death served as a major catalyst for the civil rights movement. And today's signing is also significant because it would have been Emmett's 82nd birthday. And developing now, Hunter Biden goes before a federal judge tomorrow and is expected to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax evasion charges. Hunter Biden also facing a separate felony gun possession charge. That's likely to be dismissed if he meets certain conditions. Now, he isn't expected to receive jail time, but the story doesn't end there. The lead prosecutor in the case, David Weiss, says he's willing to publicly testify before the House Judiciary Committee this fall about the case. This is part of an investigation into claims the Justice Department interfered into the case of Hunter Biden's financial dealings. 2 IRS agents working on Hunter Biden's case say he was getting preferential treatment. The DOJ rejects those claims. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us now from Washington, where Republicans are increasing calls to impeach the president over his alleged involvement in his son's business deals.
You've got IRS whistleblowers.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy elevating threats of impeaching President Biden.
When more of this continues to unravel, it rises to the level of impeachment inquiry.
These comments are the most direct yet from the Speaker regarding impeachment. According to McCarthy, the House dug up enough evidence through their investigations into allegations the Bidens were selling political influence to foreigners to warrant a deeper probe into the president's role.
What an impeachment inquiry does, it gives us the apex of the power of Congress for Republicans and Democrats to gather the information that they need.
Republicans have obtained financial records showing the president's son, Hunter Biden, and brother James Biden received millions from China and Romania. Documents show cuts set aside for someone called the big guy. Multiple sources allege the big guy is Joe Biden. The White House standing by the president's statement he had nothing to do with these deals.
The president was never in business with his son. I just don't have anything else to add.
Former Biden family business associate, however, saying the president had direct involvement.
Hunter and Jim Biden were paranoid about keeping Joe Biden's involvement secret.
What are the big differences that an impeachment inquiry can achieve that, say, the House Oversight's investigation might not be able to?
When that shifts to associating the word impeachment with the process, the powers don't necessarily change. And they might give the committee additional powers, but not necessarily. It sets the House and the Senate on a particular path that we hope we never have to go through as a country.
Another Biden business raising questions, Hunter Biden's artwork. He sold at least $1.3 million worth. A national art critic telling Politico it is absolutely 100% certain that what is being sold is the Biden name. One of the buyers, LA-based investor Elizabeth Naftali, receiving a presidential appointment from Joe Biden 8 months later. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
FedEx pilot union members have turned down a labor deal that included a 30% pay increase and an equal bump in pension benefits. Now, that proposed contract was reached in May, and union leadership endorsed the deal. Well, now the union says it will go back to negotiations to find a deal that members will accept. The rejection comes amid a nationwide pilot shortage for passenger lines and cargo carriers. A federal judge declared today she is not changing her decision that allows NFL coach Brian Flores to take the NFL and 3 teams to trial over racial discrimination charges. The league had tried to end the lawsuit after Flores signed a team contract last year with language prohibiting him from suing the league. But the judge ruled today that the contract the NFL submitted to her in the spring was missing Commissioner Roger Goodell's signature. Thus, it was invalid. A pretrial conference is now scheduled for August 4th. And new tonight, U.S. Air Force's Central said that today Russia's military damaged an unmanned U.S. drone flying over Syria Sunday. And they said a Russian jet flew dangerously close, shot flares at the drone, and then hit the propeller. The aircraft was able to return to base and land safely. The U.S. military continues to urge Russia to comply with the standards and behavior expected of a professional Air Force.
I certainly am not going to preview any actions or consequences from here. What I will just reiterate, though, Michelle, is that we've been clear that Russia needs to stop these reckless and threatening types of behavior that could result in the loss of life and put people in harm's way.
Through its state-run media, Iran has unveiled a new long-range cruise missile guided by artificial intelligence. The missile they named Abu Mahdi has a range of 1,000 kilometers, about 620 miles, and they claim it can evade radar as well. The news comes days after the United States announced that they're sending 2 amphibious warships and thousands of Marines to the Persian Gulf to deter Iranian threats in that region. President Biden's newest dog commander reportedly has bitten 7 people and sent 1 Secret Service officer to the hospital since coming to the White House. The New York Post has cited Secret Service emails obtained through a Freedom of Information Act that state that the first dog, again, Commander, a 2-year-old German Shepherd, is having the same hard time as former first dog, Major, who was removed from the White House and sent to live in Delaware after biting multiple people. Wow. Developing now, something to keep an eye on here, a weather system brewing in the Atlantic that could become a tropical depression or perhaps a tropical storm. It's moving towards the southeastern coast and could gradually develop over the next week. Now, right now, there's only a 10% chance of that happening, but if it does form into a tropical storm, it could be named Tropical Storm Emily. Let's hope not. The director of the Miami-Dade Police Department is still recovering from some critical injuries suffered from a suicide attempt. Now the hope is that his story will bring awareness to law officers around the country who may struggle with mental health. The National Desk's Alexis Cruz reports from West Palm Beach.
The preliminary, and I say preliminary, investigation shows Director Ramirez suffered from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Miami-Dade Police Director Freddie Ramirez is recovering from critical injuries Tuesday after he shot himself over the weekend during an apparent suicide attempt. The incident hitting close to home for law enforcement in Palm Beach County.
The director, usually you don't see a leader in the police departments try and commit suicide. This is one that, you know, a few and far between.
Palm Beach County Police Benevolent Association President John Kazanjian says it's hard to see something like this coming.
I'm sure he's gone through a lot of trauma, and guess what? At one time, it could just go like that. Just snap, just like that, and it's done.
Kazanjian says while there are mental health resources locally, statewide, and nationally, it can be terrifying for a police officer to come forward with their personal battles.
Because, you know, once you make the claim, you're going to go get some help, and depending on the help or the severity of it, a lot of times they can put you out, and they can find you a different job, they can take you off the street, they can take away your gun, and a lot of us don't want to do that.
He says even if an officer is scared to talk to a professional, reaching out to someone can make the difference between life and death.
A childhood friend who came down to Florida with me from Massachusetts, he worked there over in Jupiter. He retired as a lieutenant. He was going through some bad times with his family, going through a divorce. And rather than picking up the phone and calling me, you know, at one time his best buddy, he just shot himself. And I wish he would have picked the phone up and called me, because I could have probably saved his life.
That was Alexis Cruz reporting. When we come back, from Taylor Swift to the MLB All-Star Game, Seattle in the spotlight this summer. But the events are pushing police to a breaking point. The National Desk taking the pulse of America, our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. And now we start in Seattle, where police have a big problem, staffing shortages.
Early estimates predicted more than 250,000 people to swarm the neighborhoods near the stadiums for Taylor Swift and the Mariners games. Many of the officers assigned to the events called out sick.
Given all the events, I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised to hear that they have done a sick outs.
The Seattle Police Department confirms there were more missed shifts than usual, but isn't aware of any organized sick out, which is illegal. The police union president says the department has lost nearly 600 officers in the past 3 years, and the ones left are stretched too thin.
And the bottom line is we don't have enough cops based upon the workload that we're being asked to do. and cops are tired.
They do a lot of talking, but at the end of the day, we're suffering here.
Outside City Hall today, critics complain that city leaders have failed the children this summer.
We have elected officials who are not connected with the very neighborhoods that they represent.
They're angry that 3 public pools are still closed this summer, that a North Avenue library where many people cool off during the summer has been closed since April. But perhaps the most concerning is a little-known city audit.
We're very disturbed about this report.
The audit of the city's Recreation and Parks Department found that the department has failed to supply funds and services in a fair and equitable manner.
Our audit concluded that the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks is not in full compliance with city code.
It's no ordinary church cross. This large mosaic is 35 feet tall and 13 feet wide. It represents College Church of Christ in Northeast Fresno.
It's been the symbol of this church for almost 60 years, so it's an important symbol.
Fresno artist Stan Bitters created this mosaic in 1964. There are 700 tiles that complete the artwork. Taking it apart is no easy task.
Well, we brought in an expert in the art world to see what he could do. He spent 6 hours, and it was a bigger job than he was able to do.
Pierce, a church elder, is hoping someone in the building trades will know a better way to disassemble their cross.
Coming up here on the National Desk, you'll be paying more for your Spotify subscription soon as the company reports a lot of more people using that platform. We'll give you the details when we come back in 90 seconds. A record broken here. Spotify just got its highest quarterly gain in new active users in its history. The audio streaming platform adding a net 36 million new monthly active users last quarter. And it turns out the company needs them. Spotify shares fell 5% in pre-market trading. This a day after Spotify raised prices for premium plans across several countries. It's going to cost you a little more now. That's all for now. Join me tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. Check your local listings. I'm Eugene Ramirez. See you later.